Hello everybody and welcome to another Scuffed Radio video. We are once again in the back of the Chevy Suburban and we're going to be doing something today that I've never seen anyone do before. The only closest thing I've seen is been in car audio installs, like competition stuff. So we're kind of doing this for radio. And we're going to be building, I guess the best way to describe it would be an amplifier rack or a radio rack, but we're not doing the normal thing you may be thinking of with like a server rack or a wall with stuff zip tied to it. It's actually going to be a proper rack made out of very strong materials because the amplifier that's going to go on top of this thing weighs like 50 pounds or something. But I've done part of the difficult part already with the boring part, which is cutting out sections of unistrut, because that's the main material I decided to build this out of, because it would be plenty strong and there are a relatively good number of parts available for it, like these angle brackets here, and it's all kind of goes together kind of like building blocks. So as you can see, here's that breakout board with the very thick 12-volt wires running to it. I don't think I showed these in a video before, maybe not. I don't think I made any video about them, but anyway, I've got the pieces cut out, and today I want to build it together, bolt it down to the floor of the truck, and make it usable. So the first thing we got to do really is kind of assemble this thing in a way that we can see how it's going to go together ultimately. So let's set this camera up here. So I've got 4 of these pieces here and 4 of these pieces here. Then I've got a box of angle brackets and a couple boxes of bolts, washers, and nuts. This thing is no joke. I'm not playing around with this. I want this thing to be solid so that I can put any amount of weight on it and equipment and not have to worry about it falling apart. Here's my washers. They are pretty big. I wanted them to cover plenty of space on the angle bracket there, which they do. Here are the bolts I got. They are just the right length to go all the way through a piece of unistrut and then have plenty of thread on the outside, because these have to bolt through the bracket, the floor of the truck, and then they gotta have a washer and a nut on them. So this will go all the way through and be long enough and should be solid enough. So the way this is ultimately gonna work is these short pieces are gonna go like this, and they're gonna stand up like that. And then we get another long piece here, and that's gonna go across like that, and we'll have a square shaped bracket setup kind of thing. So first things first, we're gonna put this together as best we can with what we have right now. I think I want the groove on this to probably face in, because I can run cables up through here and stuff. So let's do this one here. These bolts here that go down are going to have to go through the floor of the truck. So that cannot be completed until the last step, because I'm going to drill once and not screw it up, hopefully. Grab another washer and put a bolt on. Starting to take shape now. I'm going to take my very high current massive battery cable here away from all of this just while I'm working on it, because I don't want any chance of this thing shorting against any of what I'm working on right now. We're just going to stick that there like that for a minute. See, the way everything fits together here is just super nice and convenient. I almost went with extruded aluminum, which may have been a better choice in some aspects, but I already had a whole bunch of unistrut laying around, and I've always kind of wanted to do something with unistrut. So, and this stuff is pretty heavy duty. I mean, this is going to handle the weight of the gigantic 1000-watt VHF amplifier with no problem. All them sad hams out there who complain and cry about amplifiers are going to hate this thing. One design flaw I'm noticing already here is that the angle brackets can't have 2 bolts occupying the same space. So in the final bit, I'm going to have to cut these bolts down to a more manageable length. That way I can have the bolt pattern actually hidden or have the end of the bolt hidden, you know, behind everything, but at the same time not be sticking way out. Okay, well there's one side of it. Like I said, these bolts here, I don't like the look of that. I want them facing inward. So what I'm gonna have to do ultimately is cut some of these shorter. That way in the inside here where the brackets meet up, I can actually have two bolts facing inwards, because right now they run into each other and you can't do that. So this will be this side here. And the reason I'm building it in this order is so that I can set both ends down, take some measurements, and then bolt these to the floor sooner rather than later, because I want this to be solid in here before I start doing anything else. Now the other thing I got to worry about here is width. How wide do I want it? I think I want it to be about 12 inches wide, maybe a little more, but that will come later because we can adjust the width before we bolt it down and deal with it then. Okay, here's part 2, just about finished. I had to go ahead and stick it on over here like that. Okay, so as you can see, the design is still very in its infancy here, but we're making progress. This is the general idea. We have a square, and on the top will sit the really big amp, and underneath it is plenty of room for rows of shelving for other things like that radio, an 11-meter amp, power supply, and it's plenty long enough that you can put multiple things on each shelf. So I think it's coming along pretty good here. I'm pretty happy with it. The next thing we got to do is determine how far apart we want to make them, and then figure out what we're going to do as far as bolting through the floor, because I do want to go through the floor. I'll seal it up against water and everything, but underneath here is not exactly a perfect flat surface, as you can see. There's a cross member, there's ridges in that, so we got to figure out where we want to land these holes so we're not interfering with something. Well, after observing the underside of the truck here, I've determined that my original plan of putting bolts straight through these into the floor is not going to work, simply because where these would land, there's a cross member under the floor here. So we're going to have to bolt this down more towards the front of the truck, just move it this way. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to get some different bolts for this, because I have these washers that are shorter, but they will not fit with the bolts that I have. These are way too long and would have nothing to grab onto. So we're going to make a quick trip to Lowe's and hopefully get something that'll fit a little better. Alright, it's the next day now. I've got my parts from Lowe's, and we're going to continue assembling this amp rack here. I didn't have time to finish it yesterday because it started getting dark, and I don't know. I could have worked on it more, but it's just a lot of trouble. So we're here the next day. I got 4 bolts and 8 washers. I'm still missing a bolt here. Here it is. It's in the bag. Okay, 4 bolts, 8 washers, that should work for this. So let's get everything pulled out here and get back to work on this thing. Back side. Yeah. Alright, so what we got are these little short ones and these little small washers. These will fit up inside here and do what we need them to do. Alright, well there is one side done. And now, as you can see, I can bolt it down to the floor anywhere I want up in here, which is going to help with the underside of the truck, because underneath there is there's a lot of stuff in the way, but there is room to do what I want. We're just going to have to do it carefully so we get it in the right spot. That's why I had to use the shorter bolts, to make sure that on the underside it was smooth and I could bolt it anywhere I wanted. Alright, here we are underneath the truck, and as you can see right here, that is that little tie-down anchor. So I'm going to measure off the center of that bolt to the center of this, what do you call it, like a indentation in the ridges here. And we're going to probably put our first hole right about there. And that way this washer can fit in there, seal up against that, and won't give us any trouble. And then of course I'm going to seal these up with probably lap seal or something like that, just so we don't get any kind of rust or water leakage. And that should work pretty well. As far as going further back, that groove extends all the way to the back, all the way back there. So I can drill anywhere in there and be confident that where I'm landing is going to be a usable place for a bolt. So for this portion of the rack, the leftmost side, I think it's going to be pretty easy to set up. Alright, so after crawling around under the truck, I have come up with two marks. Here's the first one, the dot in the center is where we will drill, and here's the second one. They're 16 inches, roughly 16 inches and a quarter apart from each other, and they just follow that channel straight down. Now, initially I was a little bit upset that my first rail would be so far away from the side of the truck, or I should say the inside panel here. I didn't really like that gap that much, but then I remembered that I do frequently take this body panel off to access the various pieces of feed line and other things that are back there. So having this be a gap here is actually going to be really, really good for that, because that's something I failed to consider initially, was access to the back part of this. So that gap there, it is kind of wasted space in some ways. You could still put equipment back there. If I could get some real thin batteries, they could probably sit back there if I ever wanted to use batteries. But as far as, you know, wasted space, it does feel like a little bit. The thing will be probably about 12 inches wide, so if we set this wrench, well, this piece of metal here is already kind of sitting in the right spot. That's how much space will be taken up in the back of the truck just from there. So I still have quite a bit of space available. It's just a little more than I was going to originally anticipate, but at the same time, the trade-off is you get access to the area back here, which is very important. So with that being said, I think we're about ready to drill our holes. I know that you can't just start drilling straight into carpet and expect to have good results, so I'm probably going to take a knife and start to cut away a little tiny circle of carpet so I can get to the bare metal, and then from there I'll drill through, and it should be a relatively smooth process, I'm hoping. So let's get started. Alright, let's move this battery cable out of the way here. So I think I got a box cutter here, and I think I should be able to just sort of make a small cut like that, kind of. There is a pad under here, kind of like a floor mat sort of thing, like you'd find in a house. Let's see if that did it. Okay, yeah. Okay, so yeah, it's just kind of like what you might expect. There's a pad under there, like a sound dampening pad, and underneath that is the bare metal. So you can see you do have a bit of material to get through, but the pad under there is pretty stiff, and I think I can probably start to drill through it. One thing I don't want to happen is for the bit to start grabbing threads and start ripping across the carpet. If that happens, I'm going to stop and I'm going to have to reassess my plan. But I think we're about ready to drill our first hole. It shouldn't be too hard, I'm hoping. I mean, there's no info for this stuff online. You don't get a guide on how to do this. This is like a first kind of thing. Alright, let's start our drilling process, and hopefully everything goes okay. I just don't want to see it grabbing up the carpet, but I think we'll be alright. Ooh! That wasn't too bad. Let's go check underneath and see what it looks like. Yep, there we go. We got a hole. It's a little bit off center there. That's kind of annoying, but should be okay. The washer might need to be adjusted to not right up the side of that thing. But other than that, that was not hard. You can see how much insulation is there between the floor and the carpet. Alright, and looks like we got the second hole drilled with no trouble whatsoever. You can see the ground through the floor now. That's kind of a scary thought, drilling through your car like that, but I guess I'm no stranger to it. I've been doing it for antennas in the roof for quite some time now, so it really ain't that scary anymore. So let's just test this out here. Let's stand this up, get it over the hole, and we stick it through. If I can get it to go through. The carpet's giving me a bit of a fight. There we go. Just like that. Let's do it again here. Except we're doing this one in the back. Okay. Hole that. There's our hole. And there we go. So now, as you can see, my plan is coming together. 2 bolts holding this thing down. Let's go take a look underneath. So there's that bolt. And if we ascend up here, can we see that bolt? Yep, there it is. So they're both off center just a little bit. But if I have to, I'll just bend the washer to match the contour of the underside of the floor, and we can just, I mean, the nut is not too big, it's just the washer. But I definitely am going to use a washer. I'm not doing this without one. So, yeah, it looks like we're going to need to bend this washer a little bit, which ain't really that big a deal. It may even bend on its own if I just screw it up there, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go stick it in the vise and put a little bend in it just to be safe. That probably ought to do it. Go a little further here. Okay, that'll probably do it right there. Another thing you want to do when you're punching holes through anywhere that's going to get moisture, and just in general you want to do this, is you want to get rid of any remaining little burrs or pieces of metal or crap that's going to stop you from getting a perfect seal. So we don't want to have to deal with these little pieces of metal here catching up underneath our bolt. So I'm going to go ahead and take this box cutter blade and just kind of cut everything off and make it look a little smoother, cleaner, so we don't get water. Alright, and last but not least, before we put the bolt up, we're going to put some actual silicone caulking around this hole here, just so that we don't get any moisture coming up in there. Not that this area gets exposed to a lot of moisture, but it could happen. I mean, it's on the underside of the car, the wheels are down here, anything could happen, and I just don't want to ever have to worry about rust or damp carpet or anything like that. Even if I drive through floodwaters, I want this thing to be dry. So that's what we're doing right now. Just kind of shoving some silicone up there to ensure that everything stays nice and dry. Alright, we got that one up there, and now we just gotta do the one in the back, which I'm just gonna go ahead and do off camera for speed and simplicity. Alright, so I've gotten these tightened down. This one I haven't tightened down all the way because I'm going to wait until I put this slab on top. This is going to be the top of it, and it's what's going to hold the two tops together and keep them from like moving around. But it's also just going to be a regular shelf. So I cut this out of aluminum, as you can see, and we're going to stick it on here, bolt it down, and see how sturdy it is. Alright, we've got the left side bolted down here. As you can see, just 2 bolts that go through the sheet metal and come out the bottom on the little L brackets down there. So let's go ahead and do the other side now. We're almost done here. Alright, well it's nearing completion here. I got a lot of cleanup to do, a little bit of fine tuning to do on some of the angles, and the little brackets may have to be adjusted slightly, but it came out pretty good. The only thing I don't like is how down here there's a little bit of a tilt going on with this unistrut, because the floor, the ridges in the floor actually translate to the underside of the carpet. So I was under the impression that underneath the carpet it was completely flat, and then the ridges were more of like a corrugated metal panel that was stuck to it. But I was wrong, and it actually is ridged underneath the carpet. So this ended up tilting just a little bit. I may be able to loosen these bolts and slide it over to compensate for that, but I also might not be able to. So we're going to give that a try off camera, but other than that, I think it came out pretty good, and it's going to be a pretty nice little thing to have. The amp is going to go here on top, the big amplifier that is, but that'll be a whole other video. So now we just got some cleanup to do and try it out, I guess. Well, you know what, I just couldn't help myself and decided I'm going to go ahead and mount up the amplifier. I ordered the power supply for it, and I have an antenna coming for it that can handle roughly 300 watts, but that antenna is definitely not going to be the end game antenna, but for now it'll do. I got the power supply coming. I'm designing a sequencer. So, I mean, I got some stuff going on that's going to get this amp ready to run, but I took the bottom off the amp so I could mount it up here on top of the shelf, and I just want to show you the inside of this thing real quick. Let's see how many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 transistors. Unfortunately, I don't know which transistors they are because they have these heat spreaders connected to them, and I can't remove them very easily without risking damaging something. They are also sealed, like marked with wax, so I'm going to be a little careful with that now until I learn more about this amp. I got some research papers on it, and I just got to kind of dive into all that yet. So here's the inside of the amp, some of the coils there, different things you can see. There's a lot to go through on this thing. It's an old channel 7 TV amp. Can't remember if it's channel 7 or, yeah, channel 7. It's a Harris amplifier that's been modified to run a simplex VHF transmitter. So there you go, that's gonna go in there. I've got the mounting sorted out here. I'm gonna put little nuts on the bottom of it so they don't slide around. But there you go, I think it's coming along pretty nicely. Alright everybody, it's been quite some time since the last part of the video was recorded, since I actually built this rack, so I've actually had some time to sort of, you know, live with it and see how it is. So I still have not put on the power supply for this thing. I have not actually used this amplifier yet, but it is here in the back of the vehicle, and as you can see, it's holding up very well. I took the front panel off of the amp. Oh, by the way, this is a 16 transistor amplifier, not an 8 transistor amp. So it's a 16 pill on VHF, which is just absolutely wild. I miscounted in the earlier part of the video, and it is indeed a 16 pill. So as you can see, I've used some of the storage here for a bunch of feed line, but here's the rack in its all its glory. So when driving around, there's no squeaking, no rattling, no shaking, nothing. It's pretty much rock solid. For a temporary solution, I stuck my battery breakout up here. So the battery leads that come out of there actually go up and join up here. So everything I have in here is powered off the battery directly, off these gigantic battery wires which run all the way up to the front of the car. So yeah, there you go. There's the giant amp. And I've got a Palomar Magnum here, which is semi-functional, doesn't work too well right now, but that's there, wired up to the battery. And then in the back here, I've got my Yaesu 8900 still, and you know, everything else that's normally here. So yeah, this has done very well for me. I'm really excited about the next step, which is putting the power supply in here and actually putting out such a massive hammer out of a mobile on VHF. I don't think anybody's ever done a 16 pill 2 meter amp in their vehicle. Now of course I cannot run full power while I still have this Diamond NR22 LH, because although the coil is fat, it still really can't handle a full kilowatt. So that coil is going to have to be redone, and then we'll basically just have to slowly creep up the power and watch as each component fails and replace whatever fails with better. So I'm predicting that once this thing is at full power, we probably will have replaced one of the connectors up underneath the roof,
like the 90-degree PL259 connector that's up there, that will probably have been replaced. I've probably want to say we'll probably use something other than this. This is RG142, I believe, and it'll probably be replaced with something a lot thicker. So, you know, still a lot of things to be done before this is ready to be fully, you know, a 1 kilowatt mobile. But we'll be running it at a lower power level, probably right around 300 watts in the near future here. And once that's going, it will be a lot of fun, and I'll do videos on that, and I'll make all the sad hams angry with my 16-pill VHF 2-meter amplifier. I gotta set up a sequencer for this so that I can, you know, actuate the transmit receive relay on this, because yeah, there's a lot that goes into running this much power. So anyway, thank you all for watching the video. Hope it was educational and interesting, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye 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 bye.